Hello and welcome to Creative Writing. I am Armin Rose and I will be your guide as we go through the concepts of this course. This is Part 10, The Elements of Drama. The elements of drama are divided into 10 parts: character, plot, theme, dialogue, convention, genre, audience, spectacle, design, and conversions. The Greek philosopher Aristotle first wrote about the elements of drama around 2,000 years ago. He describes the 6 elements as plot, theme, characters, dialogue, music or rhythm, and spectacle. In modern theater, convention, genre, audience, and conversions were added to the list. The elements of theater are divided into 2 parts: the technical elements and the performance elements. The technical elements include the set or the scenery, costumes, props, lights, sound, and makeup. The performance elements include acting, character motivation, character analysis, and empathy. First, we will discuss character. Most simply, a character is one of the persons who appears in a play, one of the dramatis personae, or literally, the persons of a play. In another sense of the term, the treatment of the character is the basic part of the playwright's work. Conventions of the period and the author's personal vision will affect the treatment of character. The major and minor characters. Most plays contain major characters and minor characters. The development of major characters is essential to the play. The minor character serves a specific function. Once that this is done, he can depart in peace, for we need not know what sort of person he is or what happens to him. Heroes and villains. The distinction between heroes or heroines and villains, between good guys and bad guys, between virtue and vice, is useful in dealing with certain types of plays, but in many modern plays, and some not so modern ones, it is difficult to make. The protagonist. Another common term in drama is protagonist. Etymologically, it means the first contestant. In the Greek drama, where the term arose, all the parts were played by 1, 2, or 3 actors only, and the best actor, who got the principal part or parts, was the protagonist. The second best actor was called the Eutrogenist. The antagonist and other characters. Ideally, the term protagonist should be used only for the principal character. Several other characters can be defined by their relation to the protagonist. The antagonist is his principal rival in the conflict set forth in the play. A foil is a character who defines certain characteristics of the protagonist by exhibiting opposite traits or the same traits in a greater or lesser degree. A confidant provides a ready ear to which the protagonist can address certain remarks which should be heard by the audience, but not by the other characters. Other character types. Certain writers use a character type called the raisonneur, whose comments expresses the voice of reason and also, presumably, of the author. Another type of character is the stereotype or stock character, a character who reappears in various forms in many plays. Comedy is particularly a fruitful source of such figures. A stock character from another genre is the revenger of Renaissance tragedy. Character roles. Sometimes, a group of actors work together over a long period in relatively stable companies. In such a situation, individual members of the group develop expertise in roles of a certain type, such as leading man and leading lady, those who play the principal parts, juveniles or ingenues of both sexes, or those who specialize as young people, character actors, those who perform mature or eccentric types, and the heavies, or villains. The chorus. A group of actors who function as a unit, called a chorus, was a characteristic feature of the Greek tragedy. The members of the chorus shared a common identity. The choregos, or leader of the chorus, sometimes spoke and acted separately. In some plays, the chorus participated directly in the action. In others, they were restricted in observing the action and commenting on it. In modern theater, a single actor performs the function of a chorus. He is called the narrator. The plot. The interest generated by the plot varies for different kinds of plays. The plot is usually structured with acts and scenes. A typical Greek play is divided into 3 acts. Modern plays no longer follow the 3-act structure. Plot devices. Open conflict plays rely on the suspense of a struggle in which the hero, through perhaps fight against all odds, is not doomed. Dramatic thesis. Foreshadowing in the form of ominous hints or symbolic incidents conditions the audience to expect certain logical developments. Coincidence. A sudden reversal of fortune plays depict climactic ironies or misunderstandings. Dramatic irony. The fulfillment of a plan, action, or expectation in a surprising way, often opposite of what is intended. Importance of the plot. The plot has been called the body of a play. Most plays have a conflict of some kind between individuals, between man and society, man and some superior force, or man and himself. The events that this conflict provokes make up the plot. One of the first items of interest is the playwright's treatment of the plot and what theme he would draw from it. The same plots have been and will be used many times. It is the treatment that supplies each effort with originality or artistic worth. Shakespeare is said to have borrowed all but one of his stories, but he presented them so much better than any of the previous authors that he is not seriously criticized for the borrowing. Theme. Importance of theme. The theme is considered the soul of the play and has equally varied treatments as the plot. The same theme or story may be given a very serious or a very light touch. It may be a severe indictment or a tongue-in-cheek attack. It could point up a great lesson or show the same situation as a handicap to progress. The personality, background, and social or artistic temperament of the playwright are responsible for the treatment he gives to his story and theme. We must, therefore, both understand and evaluate these factors. Stating the theme. If a play has a theme, we should be able to state it in general terms and in a single sentence, even at the risk of oversimplification. The theme of Hamlet is usually stated as the failure of a youth of poetic temperament to cope with circumstances that demand action. The theme of Macbeth is that too much ambition leads to destruction. A Streetcar Named Desire, that he who strives hardest to find happiness oftentimes finds the least. Analysis of the theme and the plot. The statement of the play in specific terms is the plot presented. Plot and theme should go hand in hand. If the theme is one of nobility or dignity, the plot must concern events and characters that measure up to that theme. As we analyze many plays, we find that some possess an excellent theme, but are supported by an inconsequential plot. Dialogue. Dialogue provides the substance of the play. Each word uttered by the character furthers the business of the play, contributes to effect as a whole. Therefore, a sense of decorum must be established by the characters. Decorum means what is said is appropriate to the role and situation of a character. The exposition of the play often falls on the dialogue of the characters. Exposition establishes the relationships, tensions, or conflicts from which later plot developments derive. Actuality in dialogue. Any artificial picture of life must start from the detail of actuality. An audience must be able to recognize it. However changed, we want to check it against experience. Conversely, the detail of actuality in realistic drama can be chosen and presented in such a way as to suggest that it stands for more on the stage than it would in life. Dramatic speech. So it is with dramatic speech. A snatch of phrase caught in everyday conversation may mean little. Used by an actor on a stage, it can assume general and typical qualities. The context into which it is put can make it pull more than its conversational weight, no matter how simple the words. Naturalistic speech. If dialogue carefully follows the way we speak in life, as it is likely to go in a naturalistic play, the first step towards understanding how it departs from actuality can be awkward. An apparent reproduction of ordinary conversation will be, in good drama, a construction of word setup to do many jobs that are not immediately obvious. Subtext in dialogue. The subtext is a web of innumerable, varied inner patterns inside a play and a part, woven from magic ifs, given circumstances, all sorts of figments of the imagination, inner movements, objects of attention, smaller and greater truths and a belief in them, adaptations, adjustments, and other similar elements. It is subtext that make us say the words we do in a play. Convention. The means the playwright employs are determined at least in part by dramatic convention. Greek convention. Greek playwrights often worked with familiar story material, legend about gods and famous families that the audience was familiar with. Since the audience was familiar with certain aspects of these, the playwrights used allusion rather than explicit exposition. In representing action, they often relied on messengers to report offstage action. For interpretation, the Greeks relied on the chorus, a body of onlookers, usually citizens or elders, whose comments on the play reflected reactions common to the community. These plays were written in metered verse, arranged in elaborate stanzas. This required intense attention from the audience. English conventions. In English drama, minor characters play an important role in providing information and guiding interpretation. The confidant, a friend or servant, listens to the complaints, plans, and reminiscences of a major character. Minor characters casually comment among themselves on major characters and plot development. Soliloquy enables a major character to reveal his thoughts in much greater detail than in natural dialogue. Asides, remarks made to the audience but not heard by those on stage, are common. Realism conventions. Towards the end of the 19th century, realistic depiction of everyday life entered genre of drama, whereas the characters may be unconventional and their thoughts turbulent and fantasy-ridden. Contemporary convention. Experimentation seems to be the keyword in contemporary drama. A narrator replaces the messenger, the chorus, and the confidant. Flashbacks often substitute for narration. Many contemporary playwrights have abandoned recognizable setting, chronological sequence, and characterization through dialogue. Genre. Genre is a term that describes works of literature according to their shared thematic or structural characteristics. The attempt to classify literature in this way was initiated by Aristotle in the Poetics, which he distinguishes tragedy, epic, and comedy, and recognizes even more fundamental distinctions between drama, epic, and lyric poetry. Classical genre theory, established by Aristotle and reinforced by Horace, is regulative and prescriptive, attempting to maintain rigid boundaries that correspond to social differences. Thus, tragedy and epic are concerned exclusively with the affairs of the nobility, comedy with the middle or lower classes. Modern literary criticism, on the other hand, does not regard genres as dogmatic categories, but rather as aesthetic conventions that guide, but also led by writers. The unstable nature of genres does not reduce their effectiveness as tools of critical inquiry, which attempt to discover universal attributes among individual works, and has, since classical times, evolved theories of the novel, ode, elegy, pastoral, satire, and many other kinds of writing. The audience. It is the act or chance of hearing, a reception by a great person, the person to hear. Playhouse, script, actors, mise en scène, audience are inseparable parts of the theater. The concept of drama insists that the audience have an indispensable role to play. We do not go to the play merely to have the text interpreted and explained by the skills of the director and his actor. We do not go as in a learning situation, but to share in a partnership without which the players cannot work. If in the theater there is no interaction between stage and audience, the play is dead, bad, or non-existent. The audience, like the customer, is always right. Every man, woman, or child who has expressed an opinion concerning a dramatic performance has, in a sense, proclaimed himself to be a critic. Whether his reaction has been good or bad, his opinion will have some effect on the thinking of those who have heard or read his comment, and what has been said will become part of the production's history. They say it's terrible, or they say it's terrific. Spectacle. The spectacle is the visual elements of the play that may come as costume, stage design, special effects, etc. It is everything you see while watching the performance. Stagecraft. The stage creates its effect in spite of, and in part because of, definite physical limitations. Setting and action tend to be suggestive rather than panoramic or colossal. Both setting and action may be little more than hints for the spectator to fill out. Theater space. Theater can also be discussed in terms of the type of space in which it is produced. Stages and auditoriums have had distinctive forms in every era and in different cultures. New theaters today tend to be flexible and eclectic in design, incorporating elements of several styles. They are known as multiple-use or multiple-form theaters. The Proscenium Theater. Since the Renaissance, Western theater has been dominated by an end-stage variant called the Proscenium Theater. The proscenium is a wall separating the stage from the auditorium. The proscenium arch, which may take several shapes, is the opening in that wall through which the audience views the performance. A curtain that either rises or opens to the sides may hang in this space. The proscenium developed in response to the desire to mask scenery, hide scene-changing machinery, and create an offstage space for performers, exits, and entrances. The result is to enhance illusion by eliminating all that is not part of the scene, and to encourage the audience to imagine that what they cannot see is a continuum of what they can see. Because the proscenium is, or appears to be, an architectural barrier, it creates a sense of distance or separation between the stage and the spectators. The proscenium arch also frames the stage, and consequently is often called a peep show or picture frame stage. This is the layout of a proscenium stage design. The stage is separated from the audience by an apron. And this is an actual proscenium stage. The thrust stage. A thrust stage, sometimes known as three-quarter round, is a platform surrounded on three sides by the audience. This form was used for ancient Greek theater, Elizabethan theater, classical Spanish theater, English Restoration theater, Japanese and Chinese classical theater, and much of Western theater in the 20th century. A thrust may be backed by a wall or be appended to some sort of end stage. The upstage end, or the back of the stage, farthest from the audience, may have scenery and provisions for entrances and exits, but the thrust itself is usually bare except for a few scenic elements and props. Because no barrier exists between the performers and spectators, a thrust stage generally creates a sense of greater intimacy, as if the performance were occurring in the midst of an auditorium, while still allowing for illusionistic effects through the use of the upstage end and adjacent offstage piece. This is the layout of the thrust stage. And this is an example of an actual thrust stage. The arena stage. The arena stage, or theater in the round, is a performing space totally surrounded by the auditorium. This arrangement has been tried several times in the 20th century, but its historical precedents are largely in non-dramatic forms such as the circus, and it has limited popularity. The necessity of providing equal sightlines for all spectators puts special constraints on the type of scenery used and on the movements of the actors, because at any given time, part of the audience will inevitably be viewing a performer's back. Illusion is more difficult to sustain in arena, since in most setups, entrances and exits must be made in full view of the audience, eliminating surprise, if nothing else. Nonetheless, arena, when properly used, can create a sense of intimacy not often possible with other stage arrangements, and as noted, it is well suited to many non-dramatic forms. Furthermore, because of the different scenic demands of arena theater, a large backstage area associated with prosceniums can be eliminated, thus allowing a more economical use of space. This is a layout of an arena stage design. And this is an example of an actual arena stage. Variant forms. One variant form of staging is environmental theater, which has precedents in medieval and folk theater and has been widely used in 20th century avant-garde theater. It eliminates the single or central stage in favor of surrounding the spectators or sharing the space with them. Stage space and spectator space become indistinguishable. This is an example of an environmental theater. Another popular alternative is the free or flexible space, sometimes called a black box theater because of its most common shape and color. This is an empty space with movable seating units and stage platforms that can be arranged in any configuration for each performance. This is an example of a black box theater. The fixed architectural stage. Most stages are raw spectacles that the designer can mold to create any desired effect or location. In contrast, the architectural stage has permanent features that create a more formal scenic effect. Typically, ramps, stairs, platforms, archways, and pillars are permanently built into the stage space. Variety in individual settings can be achieved by adding scenic elements. This is an example of fixed architectural stage. Auditoriums. Auditoriums in the 20th century, mostly variant of the fan-shaped auditorium built by composer Richard Wagner at his opera house in Beirut. These objects are shaped handheld fans and are usually upwards from back, staggered seat by the unobstructed lines. Such auditorium is designed beneath others such as houses, seats, and partitions along the side of the auditorium carry a Baroque theater. This is an example of an auditorium. Set design. Set design is the arrangement of theatrical space. The set, or setting, is the visual environment in which a play is performed. Its purpose is to suggest time and place and to create the proper mood or atmosphere. Settings can generally be classified as realistic, abstract, suggestive, or functional. This is an example of a realistic set design. This is an example of an abstract set design. This is an example of a suggestive set design. And this is an example of a functional set design. Stage facilities. The use and movement of scenery are determined by stage facilities. Relatively standard elements include trapdoors in the stage floor, elevators that can raise or lower stage sections, wagons, like rolling platforms on which scenes may be mounted, and cycloramas, which are curved canvas or plaster backdrops used as a projection surface or to simulate the sky. Above the stage, especially in a proscenium theater, it is the area known as the fly gallery, where lines for flying, that is, raising unused scenery from the stage, are manipulated, and which contains counterweight or hydraulic pipes and lengths of wood or battens from which lights and pieces of scenery may be suspended. Other special devices and units can be built as necessary. Although scene painting seems to be a dying art, modern scene shops are well equipped to work with plastics, metals, synthetic fabrics, paper, and other new and industrial products that until recently were not in the realm of theater. Lighting design. Lighting design has two functions: to illuminate the stage and the performers, and to create mood and control the focus of the spectators. Stage lighting may be from a direct source, such as the sun or a lamp, or it may be indirect, employing reflected light or general illumination. It has four controllable properties: intensity, color, placement on the stage, and movement. The visible changing is the first three properties. These properties are used to achieve visibility, mood, composition, the overall arrangement of light, shadow, and color, and the revelation of the form, the appearance of shape and dimensionality of a performer or object as determined by light. The lighting designer is often responsible for projections. These include still or moving images that substitute for or enhance painted and constructed scenery, create special effects such as stars or moonlight, or provide written legends for the identification of scenes. Images can be projected from the audience side of the stage onto opaque surfaces, or from the rear of the stage onto specifically designed rear projection screens. Similar projections are often used on scrims, semi-transparent curtains stretched across the stage. Film and still projection, sometimes referred to as mixed media, was first used extensively in the 1920s and became very popular in the 1960s. Costume design. A costume is whatever is worn on the performer's body. Costume designers are concerned primarily with clothing and accessories, but are also often responsible for wigs, masks, and makeup. Costumes convey information about the character and aid in setting the tone or mood of the production. Because most acting involves impersonation, most costuming is actual or recreated historical or contemporary dress. As with scenery, however, costumes may also be suggestive or abstract. As with the other forms of design, subtle effects can be achieved through choice of color, fabric, cut, texture, and weight or material. Because costume can indicate such things as social class and personality traits, and can even simulate such physical attributes as obesity or deformity, an actor's work can be significantly eased by its skillful design. Costume can also function as character signature. Mask. A special element of costume is the mask. Although rarely used in contemporary Western theater, masks were essential in Greek and Roman drama and the Commedia dell'arte, and are used in most African and Oriental theater. The masks of tragedy and of comedy, as used in ancient Greek drama, are in fact the universal symbols of the theater. Masks obviate the use of the face for expression and communication and thus render the performer more puppet-like. Expression depends solely on voice and gesture. Like costumes, the colors and features of the mask, especially in the Orient, indicate symbolically significant aspects of the character. In large theaters, masks can also aid in visibility. Makeup. Makeup may also function as a mask, especially in Oriental theater, where faces may be painted with elaborate colors and images that exaggerate and distort facial features. In Western theater, makeup is used for two purposes: to emphasize and reinforce facial features that might otherwise be lost under bright lights or the distance, and to alter signs of age, skin tone, or nose shape. Technical production. The technical aspects of production may be divided into pre-production and run-off production. Pre-production technical work is supervised by the technical director in conjunction with the designers. Sets, properties or props, and costumes are made during this phase by crews in the theater shops, or in the case of most commercial theater, in professional studios. Props are the objects handled by actors or used in dressing the stage. All objects placed or carried on the set that are not costumes or scenery. Whereas real furniture and hand props can be used in many productions, props for period shows, non-realistic productions, and theatrical shows such as circuses must be built. Like sets, props can be illusionistic. They may be created from papier-mâché or plastic for lightness, exaggerated in size, irregularly shaped, or designed to appear level in a raked stage. They may also be capable of being rolled, collapsed, or folded. The person in charge of props is called a props master or mistress. Music and rhythm. Music and rhythm refers to the sound of the dialogue, musicality, pace, etc. Music and rhythm help in establishing the mood of the play and builds the impelling force that may lead to the climax. Some plays have their own musical score created specifically for the show. Others, like small productions, will use the music available with permission from the composers. Sound and sound effects. Sound, if required, is now generally recorded during the pre-production period. From earliest times, most theatrical performances were accompanied by music that, until recently, was produced by live musicians. Since the 1930s, however, use of recorded sound has been a possibility in the theater. Although music is still the most common sound effect, wind, rain, thunder, and animal noises have been essential since the earliest Greek tragedies. Any sound that cannot be created by a performer may be considered a sound effect. Conversions. Conversions, closely examined, will be found to fall into two classes: changes of volition and changes of sentiment. A change of result should never be due to mere lapse of time, to the necessity for bringing the curtain down and letting the audience go home. It must always be rendered plausible by some new fact or new motive, some hitherto untried appeal to reason or emotion. This rule, however, is too obvious to require enforcement. Changes of will on the modern stage are not always adequately motivated, but that is because of individual inexpertness, not because of any failure to recognize theoretically the necessity for adequate motivation. Changes of sentiment are much more important and more difficult to handle. A change of will can always manifest itself in action, but it is very difficult to externalize convincingly a mere change of heart. When the conclusion of a play hinges, as it frequently does, on a conversion of this nature, it becomes a matter of the first moment that it should not merely be asserted but proved. Many a promising play has gone wrong because of the author's neglect or inability to comply with this condition. I do not own the pictures seen in this video. Credit for these pictures belong to their owners. The ideas discussed in this video are based on the content standards of the Department of Education. Thank you for watching and see you in the next lesson.